So the Vietnam Agent Orange Relief and Responsibility Campaign, which is a committee of Veterans for Peace, is a project, a national project of Veterans for Peace. As Susan mentioned, we started off supporting the Vietnamese lawsuit in 2007, 2005, I'm sorry, and that lawsuit went down in flames because the Supreme Court and other courts are so corrupted and self-centered. But since then, we've shifted our emphasis to legislation. And this is the second iteration. The Victims of Agent Orange Relief Act of 2013. There was also one in 2011. But it's been much, this is a new improved model, right? And it has these 5 elements. I just want to go through those really quickly. And one of the things we're asking people to do, and this is sign one of these cards. You can also keep one if you like, but we want the cards back that have been signed. The idea with these cards is that when we have enough cards from your district, your congressional district, we will try to get people from Veterans for Peace or from National Lawyers Guild or whoever else would be interested to take these cards and hand them to your congressperson so that they will understand that they have a number of constituents who support legislative action on the Agent Orange issue. And one thing I want to say is that there's been no legislative action yet on, I mean, there has been in terms of U.S. veterans, but there's never been any legislative action in terms of helping the Vietnamese. Senator Leahy, who's a marvelous man, but he's the head of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and he's slipped a few million in here and a few million in there as writers on big appropriations bills. And what this does is legislates that the U.S. government has to take responsibility to help the Vietnamese. So there are these 5 elements with this. And just go through those really quickly. And we've already covered pretty well some of them. Yeah, I just skipped one. Where did it go? Well, it's not organized. Well, number 1 is to clean up the contamination in Vietnam. And as Chuck pointed out, we're cleaning up Da Nang. That's a huge step. That's a huge step, but it's not the 28 hotspots, or it's not the unknown hotspots. And we really need, and it's unclear whether they're going to take the next step and do Bien Hoa. Phuket, I think, is being taken care of by the Norwegians, somebody.
By UNDP and...
well, there's a third country anyway that's doing Phuket.
Yeah, yeah, I forget which one.
One of those sane governments around the world is helping with the third major hotspot. But the lesser hotspots, of which we know the most about, Alui, nobody's doing nothing. The Vietnamese put a fence around the hotspot and have expelled about 24 families from that area. And we saw a couple of the victims from the Alui area. But that's all they've done is try to isolate it a little bit. But those spots need to be dealt with in a systematic way, and they're not going to be as expensive as the $80 million that's going to be on Da Nang Airport. The second item is assist the Vietnamese victims of Agent Orange, which I'm not going to cover that anymore. I think we understand what that means. The third item is provide assistance to the affected children and grandchildren of Vietnam veterans. I'll go into that a little bit of detail here. So, if those of you that are aware of the current situation, for male Vietnam veterans, the children of male Vietnam veterans, if they have a particular kind of spina bifida, that is, it's a neural tube defect. One expression is that if children are born and their spine is open, it's not fully closed. But that's just one piece of a range of neural tube defects, which includes the encephalitis that Susan talked about and so forth. However, since 2001, the Veterans Administration has recognized a list of about 20 birth defects in the children of female Vietnam veterans, of which there's only about 6,000 military veterans who were female in the Vietnam War. And there's a whole list of those. Cleft palate, congenital heart disease, clubfoot, and on and on and on, including neural tube defects, right? That's a much broader thing than spina bifida. And one other thing is that even though that list has got 20 items in it, it says it's not a complete list. So if a woman, Vietnam veteran, has a child with a birth defect, they can at least approach the VA about getting that child health care through the VA system. What this bill does will extend that same list to the children of male veterans. It's only honest. It's only the right thing to do. And as we saw with Heather Bowser's, she's got missing a leg, missing some fingers, and it's the same kind of problem that if she were the daughter of a female Vietnam veteran, she would have been able to get care for that. And her organization has listed hundreds of children of male veterans, and female veterans too, but hundreds of veterans, children who have, and grandchildren who have various kinds of birth defects, and they're not getting any help from the U.S. And it's outrageous. And these are also the same birth defects that should be for which children who have those in Vietnam should be provided assistance. The fourth element is provide assistance to the Vietnamese Americans. These are our former ARVN allies. It only makes sense if U.S. veterans have diseases and defects, and their children have birth defects, and the Vietnamese and their children have health problems. Well, the Vietnamese Americans, the former ARVNs, would have the same thing, and it's only right that we help them too. The problem is there's never been a public health study of the Vietnamese American community, never. And so the first step would be to characterize that community and the health problems that they have. And the last item, and this is one of my personal favorites, even though it's a small one, relatively small. Every 2 years since 1994, the VA has hired the Institute of Medicine to provide do a study of the scientific evidence on Agent Orange exposures for the benefit of U.S. veterans. And every 2 years they do this biennial update. And every 2 years, one of the things that they've been told to do is to make recommendations concerning the need, if any, for additional research. And every 2 years they put a nice little pair, few pages worth of recommendations in there, and every 2 years the VA ignores them. I think they've got it over the doorway at the VA headquarters. Don't look, don't find. So they have a number of recommendations. It says the VA should first of all look at its own data. The ranch hand data they have, which is just stuck in a closet someplace that they haven't looked at. They have the Agent Orange registry. Anybody here?
Yeah,
Agent
it's
Orange
bullshit.
Registry? It's bullshit. I mean, actually, it's a very good physical.
It should be a good idea, but they don't coordinate it with the primary care doctors.
Right.
And you have to tell your doctor, hey, I've been in the Agent Orange study since 1981. And they forget. And the last time after I got my cancer, I went in and I went to the Agent Orange study because I hadn't been in 10 years or something because I figured it out. And I said, so they're getting ready to spray my community with Roundup on the power lines because they don't want to pay people to cut the foliage. And the woman said, and I said, so what's the difference between the Roundup and what we were poisoned with in Vietnam? And she said, well, in Vietnam they mixed some petroleum with it or something like that. And I said, who told you to say that? And she didn't know. And I said, well, where's your information from? And she didn't know, but it was just like,
well, so
you're on your own.
So that's one problem with the Agent Orange registry is that you can go get a really good physical. It takes 4 hours to get a physical. Nice. They do a chest X-ray and all sorts of other, a guy get a very detailed physical and a detailed write-up. That goes into a file in a file cabinet that's not connected to your medical records.
That's right.
But what the IOM is saying even more is that the VA doesn't look at that information. It's sitting there, and they have never mined that for data. They've never mined. It's not even in a single place.
Did they give you a copy of that?
You can ask for a copy, and you can use it.
Could you show it to your doctor?
Yeah, sure. You can get that, but you have to take that. You have to take that information.
Right. You get about a 2-page summary or something.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
I haven't asked for it, so I don't know. But you can get that. That's your information. But you have to carry it to give it to your doctor. And that's how that doesn't even help the individual veteran. But not only that, they don't have that. They've never aggregated that data, and so that somebody can study it and find out. Oh, we have all these guys that have gone through the registry. We have this other kind of cancer that we've never looked at. And they've never looked at the children of those veterans. What percentage of those veterans have handicapped children? They don't know.
I just want to quickly mention, as everybody knows, the VA has an electronic medical record. That means that data is accessible. It would take someone who technically would be able to write a query to that database to be able to pull out the information. So it's not as though you have to go through and read all these medical records. It is sitting there. It would just really take a very good technical report writer to be able to, as Paul said, to mine that data and to pull it out. We would not be able to connect that with the children of veterans because we just don't have that data and we don't have that access. But the data for those folks who served in Vietnam, your medical records are all electronic. There is that database, so it can be done. It's that next step.
It's publicly accessible?
No. Oh, no, because that's private and confidential information. But it might take writing a grant to a foundation.
Susan, are you saying, so if I go to the agent registry, you know, your 1039, that was electronic then?
That the Agent Orange registry is not. Your medical record information is electronic. It's been electronic for about the last 10, 15 years. That is what, given that the nature of the information, that it is private and confidential, not anybody could do that. It would take someone to be able to get permission from people's medical records and to be able to do that study. I'm just saying it's possible to do it. It's there. That it's no,
well,
but you. But
it's don't look, don't find.
It's much easier. Yes.
So I'm almost done. So let me move on to a couple more things. And then the second recommendation was to conduct studies, laboratory studies on epigenetic effects. That is, and there have been a few studies that show in rats that a female rat that is exposed, her third-generation offspring can also show effects of all kinds of effects. Whether it's not even just dioxin, it's also PCBs and exposure to other sides, insecticides. There are these epigenetic effects that work their way down through rats, and it's an area that should be studied widely, and it's not. There's only a few people doing it, and they're underfunded. So, to study the epigenetic effects would solve that question of whether the male veteran's grandchild could have been affected by his exposure to Agent Orange, or female veteran's grandchild too. The third thing that they recommend is developing epidemiological protocols for studying the effects of Agent Orange on children and grandchildren of Vietnam War veterans. And their charge, the IOM charge, is for Vietnam veterans. It's not for everybody else. But even this would be a tremendous boon to the science. And it's a small, we're not talking about a lot of money, a few $1 million for each of these grants. Would solve many of these questions. And fourth is to conduct additional research on the toxicological effects of Agent Orange on aging veterans.
Doesn't impact any of us.
Wouldn't affect any of us. And there's a fifth one, which is conduct further research on the Ranchian and Army chemical cohorts. These are the guys that really were exposed every day because they were working with that stuff. And that's as a longitudinal study. They studied them back in the 1980s, I believe. Is that correct?
There's 20 years worth of data and specimens, including blood specimens. I'm sorry, this is something that we have been talking about. So there are biological specimens, there's data that's been collected. It has been held for the last several years by the Institute of Medicine, and what is needed is millions of dollars to be able to get a hold of that data and those specimens and do another study to identify what the impact is, how long the dioxin remained in the body, etc. And then also to correlate that information with the impact on the children of veterans. So it's there. It's very difficult to try to figure out who can do that study, who has the laboratory resources and the personnel. But again, it's there. It needs to be utilized.
So I think that brings us to the end. The organizers here at nationally would like people to sign in to attending these workshops. So if you haven't signed this, would you please take these and sign it? Pass this around one more time.
Good job.
Here's a pen. Yes. So I think we have some time for questions.